Hello, this is McD the Beast, and this is McD Sports 4 coming to you today with my college football coaches on the hot seat. Before I continue, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. Greatly appreciate if you do that. I know I said I'll come out with this video on Wednesday. I know it's a day late, but I still got it out. So, college football coaches on the hot seat. I believe I have 19 coaches out of the 131 teams or programs rather that their coaches should be on the hot seat. I'll give my thoughts on each one and tell you if I think that coach will be fired or not. The way I did this, I just went through every conference, and when I finished with that conference, with the coaches in that conference, I'll give a few honorable mentions of coaches that would not shock me if they get fired. So let's get into it. We'll kick it off here. I started off in the SEC. I went in the order of the Phil Steele magazine when doing this. Brian Harsin, he's going into his second season, 6-7, 3-5, 0-1 in the bowl game. So what I did, I put down the overall record, their conference record, and their bowl record at the program that these coaches are at. Uh, some boosters at Auburn tried to get Brian Harsin fired, but failed. Um, I personally like Brian Harsin. I think he's going to build something great at Auburn. It might take a few years. I know Auburn's one of those programs where it's just crazy there, and or they want results right away. I do think last year the only criticism I would give Brian Harsin last year was like, in the Alabama game. He should have just went for two right away in that first overtime to end it, in my opinion, and get the upset at home. I think if he would have won that game, that would have been huge for him. The Alabama game I'm talking about. But that's really my only criticism. They kind of got hit by the injury bug with Bo Nix being out for the year at about 3/4 into the season. But I mean, they did start off the season 6-2 last year. Um, it's pivotal for Auburn, I think, to win that Week 3 game at home against Penn State. I also think it's pivotal for them to win several of their conference games. I actually think he stays. I know a lot of people think he's going to be gone. They think that magic number is 8-4. I think he stays as long as he makes a bowl game, and I think they will make a bowl game, Auburn will. Matter of fact, it would not surprise me if Auburn's going for win number 8 into the bowl game. I think that Brian Harsin will stay as the Auburn head coach. I do believe in him. I know year one wasn't as I thought it would go, but Brian Harsin, he will stay in my opinion. I think he's gonna have a big year too. Next, Eli Drinkwitz up at Missouri, 11-12, 8-10 in the conference, 0-1 in bowl games. Um, I think he stays. Eli Drinkwitz, I'll come out and say right now, I think he gets another year. The one thing he is doing well is recruiting. He's recruiting very well, the best Missouri's ever recruited. They brought in that wide receiver. Problem is, they don't have a quarterback on the roster that's an SEC caliber starting quarterback. Um, and I do think Mizzou might miss out on a bowl game this year, but I think he'll get one more year. I know they brought in new facilities. I know he's doing well with recruiting. He's doing a lot of great things off the field, but on the field, at the end of the day, the results matter. But I think he'll get one more year. Eli Drinkwitz will at Missouri, but it would not surprise me if he gets fired. I do think he should be on the hot seat. Now to the Big Ten and other coaches in the SEC. I couldn't really think of any coaches in the SEC that I thought would lose their job. I mean, I wasn't gonna put the Vandy coach on here, Clark Lee. I don't think that's fair to put him on here. So those were really the only two I saw that came to my mind with that should be on the hot seat for and there in the SEC. In the Big Ten, we'll kick it off with Indiana's Tom Allen, 26-32, 15-28 in the conference, 0-3 in bowl games. They had that 1 year in 2020 during the COVID season that they probably caught a few breaks, to be honest with you, with how the Big Ten's COVID policies were, and they took advantage of some teams, and I think they went 6-2, I want to say, in their season, something like that. But Tom Allen, I do think he should be on the hot seat. Last year was a massive disappointment. I mean, 2-10. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I thought, and I was one of the people that were kind of hesitant to pull the trigger in Indiana, saying they're going to make a New Year's Six bowl. I was like borderline on it, but this upcoming season, there's several key games I think for Tom Allen. It starts off with Week 1 against Illinois, and I'll be honest right now, I think Illinois goes in and beats Indiana. Um, and to be absolutely honest, I think Indiana's heading towards a very dark place in the football program's history. I think they're going to keep Tom Allen as long as he at least gets to 4-8. But I don't expect Tom Allen to be the head coach of the Indiana Hoosiers there for the future, past it another year or two. But I think they keep him as long as they go 4-8. I don't think they go 4-8, so I'm going to actually say he gets fired. But it won't surprise me if they just keep him another season, see what he could do. Scott Frost, you know this guy was going to be on the hot seat video. It's not a real college football hot seat video. Arrest Scott Frost is on at 15-29, 10-25 in the conference. I think he keeps his job though. I think the goal is to make a bowl game, maybe even get to 7 wins. I think Nebraska might have a shot to get to 8 wins this year. I think they have a good shot too. I think this is the best team he's fielded. And I think Scott Frost keeps his job. I think he finally strikes gold. I know a lot of people sit there and say, "Oh, it's the best 3-9 team ever." Yeah, I don't care. You are what your record says you are. You're 3-9. You lost a bunch of close games. Learn how to win them. But I think Scott Frost keeps his job. I really do. And hopefully, Nebraska can start consistently winning 8-9 games a year at minimum. And Scott Frost turned it around there in Nebraska. So, but this is the big year for him. That Northwestern game and Dublin Island is huge for Scott Frost, in my opinion. So, those were the Big Ten coaches. Um, a few others that came to my mind that I actually thought about a little. Well, really, there was only one, and that was James Franklin. But he signed that big extension. I think he's going to be the head coach there at Penn State for at least minimum another 3 to 4 years. But that's the only other coach I've really seen trickle around there on hot college football coaches hot seat list. So let's move on to the ACC. We'll kick off with Louisville, Scott Satterfield. 18-19, 12-13 in the conference, 1-1 in bowl games. Louisville, they want to be one of the better programs in the ACC. Scott Satterfield has not been that guy yet, and it's interesting because Eli Drinkridge, both of them came from App State. Scott Satterfield kind of built that program, and Eli Drinkridge kind of only, I think he was only there for 1 year if I'm not mistaken. He went, I think, 13-1, and Missouri picked him up. And right now, I'll actually say to be completely honest, with everything on the table, Eli Drinkwitz is doing a better job than Scott Satterfield. I do think Scott Satterfield gets fired at the end of the year. Um, I think even if they go 6-6, I think he gets fired. I think he really needs to show that Louisville is heading in the right direction. They do have some playmakers on offense. Defensively, I think they're going to be bad, but you look at Louisville, they're probably a middle of the road team in the ACC. It kind of reminds me of the Justin Fournette situation there. Virginia Tech went 6-6 last year before losing the bowl game to Maryland, going 6-7. But they fired Justin Fournette, I think, a game left in the season. Kind of reminds me of that situation there. So I do think he gets fired. I know Louisville, they want to win there. I know they do. So I do think he gets fired. Scott Satterfield there. Mike Norvell at Florida State, 8-13, 6-10 in the conference. I do not think Mike Norvell gets fired. Matter of fact, I'll come out and say right now, I, I think the big upset of the week is going to be Florida State over LSU. I'm not that high on LSU this year. I think Brian Kelly's going to have a tough year in the SEC this year with LSU. I think it kicks off week 1. And I do think Mike Norvell keeps his job. I think there's several games. I think there's like a list of 5 games that he's probably going to be an underdog in. If he can win 2 out of those 5, I think he could definitely make the argument, hey, I have this program going in the right direction. And we knew it was going to be a bit of a rebuild there at Florida State. But at Florida State, 8-13, I gotta pick you in the hot seat. To me, Florida State's one of those programs that should be competing for national championships year in and year out most years. But I do believe Mike Norvell is taking them in the right direction. It's just one of those things. I'm not doing my job if I don't put Mike Norvell on the hot seat there at Florida State. More ACC coaches. Diener Babers, 29 and 43, 15 and 35 in the conference, 1 and 0 in bowl games. The 1 year wonder, in Diener Babers. 2018 was his year, but I think they went 10 and 3. I do think he did. Actually, no, he didn't. Looking at the bowl record, he has not made a bowl game outside of that 1 year in 2018. Um, and the athletic director for Syracuse already came out and said that it's bowl game or you're gone, basically. Now, Diener Babers, I do think, is fielding one of his better teams. Sean Tucker, the running back, is at worst probably a top 8 running back in the country. They have some studs on defense that are NFL prospects. So this is one of the better teams Diener Babers is fielding. It is kind of a tough schedule. There's some games early they're going to be slight underdogs in. I'm thinking of that Purdue game. I believe there's another game in there as well. They're going to be a slight underdog in. I believe there's also another pick 'em. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Um, he's going to have to win some of those games, I think. He needs to be going into November, I think, at worst with 5 wins on the schedule. Unfortunately, I think he comes up a bit short. I have Syracuse going 5-7 this year. I think if I don't have my record predictions in front of me. That's coming out here next week, or not next week. Probably a week. Yeah, probably next week. Probably around this time next week. Thinking about it. Anyways, Dina Babers, I do think gets fired at the end of the year, but I do think he does land a Group of 5 coaching job right away. So I don't think Dina Babers is a bad coach. It's tough at Syracuse. He had that 110 win season. He's been Clemson before, so but I think he's just gonna come up a bit short of that 6 win mark, and he'll get canned. So another ACC coach, Jeff Collins. Man, that's a lot of coaches in the ACC that deserves to be in the hot seat. This one's obvious: 9-25, 7-18 in the conference. Um, I'm just gonna be blunt with saying this. I do think he gets fired at the end of the year, and it's not absolutely his fault that he's gonna get fired. That schedule's brutal. You know they have UCF, Ole Miss, and I think at least those two in the non-conference. Oh yeah, and Georgia in the non-conference. Um, it's gonna be tough. I thought last year was the year if when they do anything was the year to at least show that the rebuild was working. I know he's trying to get out of that triple option system. There, Jeff Collins is a triple. He took over for Paul Johnson, who some people say he retired. Some people say he was forced out the door. I really don't know what happened there, but I knew this was going to take a couple years, but there's been no improvement. 3-9, 3-9, 3-9, basically. I think 3-7 in one COVID season, but I do think Jeff Collins gets fired. That Clemson game's huge for him. He needs to at least show you something in that Clemson game. Um, because to be honest, I have Georgia Tech going 3-9 again this season. But if there's gonna be a fourth win, it's gonna be that Clemson game. So those are the head coaches there in the ACC. I think I named the 4 that I really think are on the hot seat. Some people might think the guy up at Boston College, Jeff Hafley, might be on the hot seat. I think he's actually doing a pretty good job there at Boston College. I actually think they're getting ready to turn the corner there at Boston College. So um, I don't think he deserves to be on the hot seat. I also said this in the college football new hire ranking video. I don't think Tony Elliott is going to work at Virginia personally. So I do see that maybe being a short stint there at Virginia. But let's get into the Big 12. Steve Sarkeesian, 5-7, 3-6 in the conference. Yeah, you're at Texas going 5-7. You're on the hot seat. It's that simple. And I'll say this: I do not think that Steve Sarkisian will be at Texas for more than 3 or 4 seasons. I do think they will fire him within the next 3 to 4 seasons at the most, maybe even shorter than that. I think they downgraded when they hired him. I know he's gotten some pretty big recruits in Arch Manning. Some people do think that Arch Manning's such a high recruit only because his last name's Manning. We'll see about that. They bring in Quinn Ewers. They do. He does have the best running back in the country, in my opinion, in B.J. Robertson. Um, but so he does have that. He's probably gonna have to lean on that a lot offensively. They should be okay defensively. Texas. I don't think he loses his job, but um, I do, as I was trying to get at earlier, I do think they downgrade from Tom Herman when they hire Steve Sarkeesian. When I saw the news, I, I was like, really? I mean, it felt like a downgrade because at least Tom Herman won a New Year's Six Bowl during his tenure at Texas. Steve Sarkeesian, I don't think he'll get fired, but he deserves to be on the hot seat. So. And then another Big 12 coach, Neil Brown at West Virginia, 17 and 18, 11 and 15 in the conference, 1 and 1 in bowl games. I don't think he gets fired. The schedule is tough, so I think 5 and 7 will keep him around. And as a matter of fact, I do think West Virginia does have a good shot to get to a bowl game since they brought in JT Daniels. But this, in my opinion, from afar, I know I'm a Maryland Terps fan. West Virginia is our biggest rival. It hasn't really worked out, in my opinion. I know he's kind of changing the system there from winning games 56-50 to winning games 23-20. Um, I know that does take some time. And he has had some moments there at West Virginia. I'm not saying that he hasn't, but it just feels underwhelming to me so far. I don't think he gets fired, but I do think he's a name to keep an eye on. It will not surprise me if he gets canned at the end of the year there. So those are the two Big 12 coaches that I have there on the hot seat. Um, I couldn't really think of any other coaches really. I mean, you look at me, and I'll come out and say right now, I don't think Sonny Dykes is going to work at TCU. I just don't. Um, so I think that's maybe a name to keep an eye on. But overall, those were the two names that came to my mind with the Big 12, with coaches there on the hot seat. Pac-12, Herm Edwards. Uh, Herm Edwards, I do think will get canned at the end of the year, or he'll be forced to retire. 25 and 18, 17 and 14, 1 and 2 in bowl games. You might sit there and be like, at Arizona State, that's a good record. And it is, but he has that whole NCAA investigation under him. I believe it's because during like the height of COVID in June of 2020, they snuck recruits in for visits when they weren't supposed to. Um, the big quote from the Athlon Sports magazine uh, was basically that Arizona State was a dumpster fire. Um, you look at their roster. I think they have the second least talented roster in the Power Five, if I'm not mistaken. If you look at the talent rankings, I think it's going to be kind of a rough year for Arizona State. So I do think he's either going to be forced to retire or he'll get fired at the end of the season. Justin Wilcox at Cal, 26 and 28, 15 and 25, 1 and 1 in bowl games. I was actually a bit surprised he wasn't fired this past season. He has to get to a bowl game. There's no way around it. Um, and I actually think that he'll get fired at the end of the season, Justin Wilcox. And listen, 6 and 6 might not be enough. You know, some people do throw the excuse saying he had some strict COVID policies or guidelines that he had filed during 2021 and 2020, or some in 2021 and in 2020. And I get that, but I mean, he's replacing a guy in Sonny Dykes. That's who he replaced. That was there in 3 seasons, and they got rid of him for going 5 and 7. I think it was his first under 500 season. Wilcox has had I think 2 under 500 seasons, so he really needs to win. Unfortunately, I just don't think he's the guy. And I do think he gets fired there at the end of the season. So those are all the Power Five coaches that I think that should be on the hot seat. At the Pac-12, I will say Chip Kelly's a name to keep an eye on. I know some people might be like he just got an extension. I'm not sold that Chip Kelly's going to work out there at UCLA. They're moving to the Big Ten. Um, Lincoln Riley's the other coach there at USC. And I know UCLA in football has always been kind of number two. there, but I think they might want to. I personally think if they have the opportunity to make a splash, they would. So, um, keep an eye there for Chip Kelly and Carl Dorrell is is another name there at Colorado. He was going to be on this list until I heard what the Colorado president basically said, calling the Pac-12 the elite conference, despite USC and UCLA leaving for the Big Ten, and saying that he looks down on the Big 12. I got some news for Colorado. Get rid of your president if you care about sports. That's basically what I think about that comment. That to me, that's a comment that does not say good things in the future for Colorado. So those were the other two names that I basically looked at there. And the Arizona coach, Jed Fish, I think is his name. I kind of forget his name. He he shouldn't be on the hot seat in my opinion, because that team actually did not look bad in the second half of the season. Arizona Wildcats. I actually think they might pull off an upset or two this year. And also, David Shaw at Stanford. I refuse to put him on the hot seat. I think Stanford thinks he's a great head coach. It's just that right now, they're in a bit of a tough patch with their football program. But I think they are listed as one of the most talented programs in the Pac-12. So maybe they bounce back some. But anyways, let's get to the group of five. We'll kick off with Tulane there and the American with Willie Fritz. I do not think he gets fired. I think they bounce back some. Tulane 31-43, 16-32 in the conference, 2-1 in bowl games. Last year nothing went right for Tulane. I think that they bounce back some. They can't be any worse than what they were this past season, in my opinion. So I think they bounce back some, and Willie Fritz keeps his job. Jeff Scott at South Florida, 3-18, 1-14 in the conference. He has to win. And when I mean win, he needs to win, I think, a minimum of 5 games. I think he has to go 5-7. They brought in a lot of transfers. They do say, if you look at the ratings, that this is one of the more talented South Florida teams in recent memory. He really needs to win. I could see them being that surprise team in the American, maybe even cracking a bowl game. I do think he probably gets canned there at the end of the year, because if anything underwhelming, in my opinion, with Jeff Scott, he's probably getting fired. And to be honest, if it's anything less than a bowl game, it's probably he's going to get fired. So, um, I do think more likely or not, South Florida will end up not missing a bowl game. So he probably gets fired. Uh, you look at Dan Gonzalez there at I believe New Mexico. Yeah, New Mexico. Dan Gonzalez at New Mexico. 5-14, 3-12 in the conference. Gotta put you in the hot seat of that record. It's just that simple. I know some of these Group of Five programs, that it's their financial situations are different than the Power Five conferences, but that's a horrible record. I mean, 5-14, 3-12 in the conference. Hopefully, New Mexico's hanging the right way. And then Marcus Arroyo at UNLV, 2-16, 2-12 in the conference. That's brutal. That is just brutal. And I do think he probably gets fired at the end of the year. UNLV, I forget his name. They replaced someone that was a lot better than that record, per se. Tony Sanchez, that's his name. They replaced. He wasn't doing a great job or anything, but he had a better record than 2-16 in his first two seasons. So I do think Marcus Arroyo gets fired at the end of the year. I say Danny Gonzalez probably gets another year, only because New Mexico kept what's his face that is escaping my memory for a very long time, and he was keeping going 4-8 every year. Jake Spavital at Texas State. 9-27, 7-17 in the conference. He's on the hot seat because he's with that record, and also the Sun Belt is trying to become the best Group of Five conference. They're bringing in JMU this year. I believe they're also bringing in Southern Miss. I believe it's Southern Miss, Marshall, and Old Dominion this year. Right? They're bringing in those three, and they're trying to really become the best Group of Five conference. Um, that he, I mean, you look at Texas State. They might want to look at making a move there. Uh, I personally don't know if he'll get fired or not because I don't know Texas State's situation that well, but they might want to look into making a move only because um, you want to get ahead of some of these teams in the Sun Belt. Mike Bloomgreen at Rice, 4-8, 11. I missed it. This record here. I think he went 4-8 this past season. He's 11-31 overall. I butchered that basically. He's 4-8, 11-31 overall. I think he went 4-8 this past season. I think he keeps his job. If you look at Rice, they're actually competitive in the conference play. It's just the out conference play, um, is the issue there with Rice, and that's not surprising at all. They'll probably lose a week one game to USC by a lot, but I needed to put a coach in the Conference USA on the hot seat. I felt like he was the one that was probably at least on the warmest seat because there's not really a coach on the hot seat in the Conference USA. Another coach to keep an eye on is North Texas's head coach. God, his name escapes me. The North Texas head coach, but he was on the he was on the list of getting some Power Five jobs. Seth Latro is his name. He was on the list of getting some jobs a few years ago, and he didn't get any jobs, and since then he's kind of been around 500. That's maybe a name to keep an eye on as well for maybe a change there. Scott Loeffler there at Bowling Green. I have to throw a I had to go ahead and throw a Mac coach up there. He seemed like the one that was on the hot seat, in my opinion. And I actually do think he's on the hot seat. And I think it's more likely or not there'll be a head coaching change there at Bowling Green. Um, some of these Mac programs, the financial side of it is really tough. So some of these coaches overstay their welcome. But I do expect Scott Loeffler to get fired at the end of the year. But hey, he did beat Minnesota this past season, so he does have that going for him. But anyways, those are your group of five coaches there on the hot seat. I kind of went through every conference. I didn't spend as much time on these group of five coaches because some of the programs in the group of five are just there's the finances. It's just that some coaches may stick around a lot longer than they should. But yeah, just want to come out with the video here with my coaches on the hot seat. Comment down below. Tell me what you think about the video. Tell me if I miss any coaches. Tell me what coaches that you think should be on the hot seat. I always like hearing some feedback there. But thanks for watching the video. Hit the thumbs up. Please subscribe to your channel. I really appreciate you do that. And this is McD the Beast signing off.